Okay, let me bring up the screen. All right. So, a 4-week whirlwind tour through the book of Revelation really deserves maybe more time than we've given it. But again, what I hope from this is that that it's like John's purpose in writing the book, like a veil or a curtain has been moved back, and you can see what's really going on and some of the heart of what's going on. So what I want us to turn to, just to finish off with in this 4 weeks, is to look at what are the implications? What does actually the book of Revelation have to say about our lives, our lived experience as Christians? Is it only a prediction about future events, or does it actually have something to say about how we should live here and now? And I think it does. So Eugene Peterson wrote this, and he was talking about the satanic strategy against the church, against the people of God, against the plan of God. He says the strategy is to normalize Christians into a homogenized, everything's the same Roman pudding of good citizens who really should try to get along with each other as best as they can. When this is successful, everyone becomes a Christian in such a way that it makes no difference. So he says, the satanic strategy against the plan of God and the purpose of God is not outright attack, but it's to make Christianity so homogenized that it doesn't stand out and it makes no difference at all. So when the message is, you should just be, a good Christian wouldn't rock the boat, or a good Christian wouldn't cause a stir or make a fuss, or you're being disruptive, that's not very Christ-like of you. Eugene Peterson says, no, that's actually a satanic strategy against the plans and purposes of God. He says the frontline work of Christian communities, the thing that we should be most concerned about, you and me as Christians, is not against unbelief, not against anti-belief of God, but against dulled belief. This is what Eugene Peterson sees as the major message of the book of Revelation. Not against misbehavior, doing the wrong thing, but against blurred behavior, where our Christianity and our everyday life, or our living in whichever culture, whichever age that we're living in, gets mixed together. And so what the result of that is a Christianity that makes no difference, no impact. It doesn't extend the kingdom. It just looks like the culture around it. Eugene Peterson says, this is what the book of Revelation is speaking to and is concerned about. John wants to inspire and encourage the churches of his age and the churches of our age and the churches of the age to come to be distinctive, to stand up for the gospel and to stand up for justice and Jesus. What's interesting is 8 of the last 16 verses in this book are to do with behavior. They're to do with actions and activity and things that we do. So the one who does wrong continues to do wrong. The vile person continues to be vile. The one who does right continues to do what is right. And the holy person continues to be holy. These are activities, actions, behaviors that we're doing. It goes on, verses 12 to 16. I'm coming soon. My reward is with me. I'm bringing the reward. I will give to each person according to what they've done. There are actually implications to my behavior and my activity. And one day I will have to present a case for why I did what I did and what I did with what God had given me. And that should, it's not that this, that should inspire some kind of holy fear within us. I will be held accountable for the life I was given and how I spent it. And I'm going to have to make a case for that in the presence of God. And then he goes on, he says, blessed are those who wash their robes, outside of the dogs, those who practice magical arts, the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idolaters, everyone who loves and practices falsehood. So John isn't saying the thing that'll trip you up is what you think or what you believe. He says, no, there's real implications to the activities and the actions that we do. Now, John isn't talking about some kind of works-based or righteousness or some kind of legalism that you can earn your way into salvation. He's saying, no, what he's talking about is covenant faithfulness. So in the Old Testament, God makes covenants with his people, and covenants are like marriage ceremonies. They're like marriage agreements where two parties come together and they make a promise to each other. They have an agreement with each other about what kind of behaviors and what kind of attitudes are going to be acceptable within this relationship. What are the terms of this agreement? It's like a contract, right? What are the terms of this agreement? So you say, I'll be faithful, I'll stay with you through sickness, through health. Like I'm making these promises to you in this moment. This is what the Old Testament covenants are like. And in order to, so all of the rules in the Old Testament, all of the laws that come with the covenants, they're not about how you earn salvation or how you earn relationship with God. Instead, God is the one who acted first and entered into relationship with Abraham and Adam and Moses and David and all of these people. God is the one who saves. God is the one who acts in relationship. But now that God has entered into relationship with you, now that he has saved you, you are called to be faithful to this covenant. There's something you have to do as well. And so it's not works-based righteousness that you're made righteous by what you do or you're saved by being good enough. It's instead covenant faithfulness. I'm going to be faithful to this covenant, like in my marriage, that there is behavior that is acceptable in my marriage and behavior that is not acceptable in my marriage. And there may be, I hope never to find out, that there is some behavior that a marriage can't survive. And so in our relationships with God, we are in a covenant with him, and we're called to be faithful to this relationship that we have. So it is activity, it's action, behavior, activity focused in a sense, but it's not how we earn salvation. God does that all on his own for us. Nothing we could do could earn it, but having received it, we should live worthy of it. Okay, this is what John is talking about. So again, 8 of the final 16 verses reinforce the purpose of the book: holy obedience among God's people so that they will receive the reward of salvation. Again, we don't have time maybe to unpack this, but salvation in the Bible has 3 horizons or 3 tenses in mind. Past tense, I have been saved. There was a moment in time, I raised my hand in church or someone led me in a prayer of salvation. There was a time in my life I made a decision to follow Jesus and to trust him. I am being saved. God is currently working with me to continue to save me. There's habits and behaviors and attitudes that I carry that God is still delivering me from. So I have been saved, I am being saved, and I will be saved. There is a future moment, a future thing that I'm going to step into that I haven't stepped into yet. There's a crown I'm going to receive. I'm going to receive the reward of salvation, but it's in the future. So this is what John has in mind when he's talking. And this book is a spiritual book. It's about our lived experience of faith. What does it mean to be a Christian and to live faithful to this gospel? So I think we're going to be very brief about it, but that Revelation has these different elements in it about our spirituality. It has it's about worship. It speaks about worship. It speaks about discernment. So being able to decide or see between 2 things. It speaks about faithfulness, and it speaks about resistance. So when do we say yes and when do we say no? It's a self-critical book. It looks inwards, and it's about witness and mission, and ultimately it's about hope. So let's unpack those a little quickly. So at the center of this book is a call to worship the one true living God who sits on the throne. This is a clear sound from the beginning to the end of the book of Revelation. Worship is all about allegiance. Who am I giving my loyalty to? Who am I following? And it demands a choice. Am I going to follow God, or am I going to follow culture or society or whatever it may be? What has my loyalty? What has my allegiance? And so it has two functions in the book of Revelation. It works in two different ways. The first way is that when we worship, we're going to be caught up in the spirit like John was. We're going to be exposed to and be caught up into this environment of heaven, like John saw in chapters 4 and 5. We're going to have the curtains pulled back, and we're going to see the glory of God. We're going to encounter his presence. We're going to fall down at his feet and stretch out our hands to touch his hem and just proclaim, holy, 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 worthy, worthy, worthy. And as we worship, more and more, we're going to be aligned to the reality of God. We're going to be, the Bible's in biblical language talks about conformed to his image. We're going to look more and more like him as we worship him. And the second thing that John says, the second consequence or product of our worship is that people will notice, and they will either be intrigued or excited about what they see and want to know more, or they're going to be hostile. They're not going to understand it. It's not, from the outside looking in, it's going to look crazy and like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And they'll either be interested or they'll be hostile towards it. That's the reality. This is what John says will happen when we worship God. So if we have resistance as Christians, if we experience resistance as churches, it should not surprise us. We shouldn't think that we're doing the wrong thing. It could very well be just because you're doing the right thing. Resistance in the Bible is never only because God is resisting you, right? But because you are being faithful to God and you're pushing up against something in the society or culture that's around you. Okay, the second thing, discernment. Being able to see through things, to see the reality of things that's behind it. And so Revelation walks this line. It never tells us to totally disengage from the world. Or to totally reject culture, but it calls for discernment. Nothing like New Zealand culture is not 100% good. Danish culture is not 100% good. German culture is not 100% good. But there are, I know, Heidi, this is a shocking revelation for you today. But there are good things in it. So the gospel will land in some aspect of Kiwi culture, it'll land in some aspect of German culture, and it'll land in some aspect of Danish culture. And so there are things in our cultures that affirm the truth and goodness of the gospel, but there are things also in our cultures that the gospel will challenge. And so we have to learn, as faithful disciples of Jesus, what's our job? Well, our job is not to completely remove ourselves from culture, go start some kind of hippie commune somewhere, or become Amish, or remove ourselves from culture and all live together in the same compound and never do anything with the outside world. That's not a biblical response to the presence of Babylon, right? And then the opposite end of the spectrum is that everything in our culture is good, and so we accept everything, and then we figure out how to reconcile that with the Bible. You see a lot of that today in modern theology and trying to do away with the problematic aspects of the Bible to better align with what culture accepts as proper and acceptable. And so we as faithful followers of Jesus can't do either of these two things. We have to walk this line of faithfulness, which sometimes will cause us to affirm our culture, and sometimes it'll cause us to challenge our culture and actually to take a stand against something that we see. We're called to be in Babylon, but not of Babylon. So we're called to remain but we're called to be a lighthouse that points to a better reality and a better way of living. Our culture, our society is hungry for a different way of living. We've tried so many different things, and nothing has given us the satisfaction. Nothing has satisfied the longing that we have. And our latest experiment of secularism and post-secularism is coming up with the same answer. We're just impoverished, and spiritually, emotionally, and socially. And so the church needs to exist as a lighthouse pointing to a better way of living. That's our job. Faithfulness and resistance. So again, where do we say yes and where do we say no? The life of a follower involves developing the courage to stand up to power and abuse with the truth of Jesus. And that may mean that you end up taking the blows, you end up taking the arrows in place of what was already getting them. And are we prepared? Are we prepared to experience that kind of resistance or persecution in our lives? So remember, in Revelation, the resistance of the saints is not achieved by joining a militia and storming the Capitol building, for example. It's by staying true to the gospel in Jesus, come what may. And often it's on behalf of others. So we resist the culture around us by staying true to what we believe to be true about Jesus. And that may result in us experiencing persecution, pain, all manner of things. So again, so what does Christian spirituality look like in the book of Revelation? It's self-critical. It looks inwards, and we are honest with ourselves, and we identify where we fall short. Sometimes we're not very good at that. We think everything we do is good and everyone else is wrong. That is not the spirituality of the book of Revelation. So John, writing this book, including everything that happened, included the things that were embarrassing. For instance, twice he bows down and worships an angel, and he's reprimanded or he's corrected for that. So he misplaces his worship. He gets his worship wrong, the focus of his worship wrong. And if John can do that, you and I, we are not John. We are not the beloved disciple. We didn't walk around Galilee with him. We didn't lay our head on the chest of Jesus and rest with him. We weren't part of his inner circle of three. So if John can get it wrong, you and I are not going to fare any better, right? We are also going to get things wrong in our discipleship, in our worship, and in our following Jesus. And 5 of the 7 churches that John writes to in this letter, they receive criticism from Jesus. So a serious spirituality will continue to turn the light on ourselves and look for opportunities to repent. As Christians, we should grow the muscle of learning to rejoice every time we have an opportunity to repent, because it's an opportunity to do better, to recognize something was off and that we should do better. So, maybe some questions to reflect on this week as you go about your week is to think, if I was to think, do I know where I'm missing the mark? Am I self-aware enough to know where I get things wrong and where I'm not living up to the mark? And then secondly, how well do I receive the accurate criticism of others? And people will be critical of you. The first thing you should do when you receive criticism is to think, is this accurate? Often our response to criticism, because we all want to be innocent, it's like a basic emotional, psychological need that we have to be innocent, is to deny the criticism. No, that's all right. They just don't understand. They weren't there. They didn't see what happened. But healthy, mature people, when they receive criticism, they think, was there any truth or basis to that criticism? And to be honest and to think through it. And sometimes the answer will be no. No, this person actually, they weren't even, they're reacting to someone else's reaction. The criticism isn't accurate. Sometimes it's accurate criticism. Sometimes the things people say about you or to you as a critical thought, sometimes they're accurate. I don't know if you know this. Not all the time, maybe, but sometimes they're accurate. How well do you receive it? Can you hear it and think, that's true, I should do better? Again, this isn't about condemnation. So you don't spend all day thinking about everything that's wrong for you, wrong about you, or the wrong things that people have said about you, and then feel stink about yourself, then feel bad about yourself. But to go, no, the reason I do this is not for condemnation and heaviness. It's so that I can align myself with faithful discipleship. I want to be a better disciple tomorrow than I was today. I want to be a better disciple in 10 years than I am today. And the only way I'm going to get there is by hearing the feedback of others and hearing the Holy Spirit within me, identifying things that I should work on, and then work on them. We are in partnership with them. Okay. So it's self-critical, it's self-aware, it looks inward. Where am I getting it wrong? I 100% guarantee you, no one in this Zoom call, not me, not Anna, not Peter, none of us are fully there yet. None of us are perfect disciples of Jesus. And so there's always something we can work on. The next one, mission and witness. So again, Revelation has often become this book to be pulled apart and studied and to create a timeline of end times and dig deep into, what did John mean when he wrote this one word? So you can do that. That's fine. But primarily, I think the book of Revelation is a book to be lived out, not pulled apart and dissected like on a surgeon's table. Christian spirituality is active. The John who writes the book of Revelation is the John who wrote things like, how can you say you love God who you can't see, but you can't love your brother you can see? Oh, wow. The spirituality isn't just about me and Jesus, it's about me and everyone who's around me. And he also writes, they will know you're my disciples by how you love one another. Oh, suddenly my worship is reflected not just in how high I lift my hands on a Sunday, but in how I treat the people that are around me. And this is a reflection of faithful, obedient discipleship. So Revelation paints a picture of a community of faith that's distinct from Babylon, right? The culture that's around us. And its distinctiveness is both attractive and offensive to the people around them. So when you are living faithfully to Jesus, people will be attracted to you. And people will be annoyed, offended, irritated by you. And if you want to be liked by everyone, perhaps faithful discipleship is not for you. So have a think about that. So you will witness to the truth of God in your activity, in your behavior. You will witness to him. Finally, it's a book of hope. Our Christian spirituality centered around this idea of hope. God takes evil and injustice seriously. One day soon, he's going to renew humanity and all of creation. And we hope and long for the time when he wipes away all tears and heals all nations, and the day when all people worship him. We are moving towards something good. And we want to bring people along, not just to the result, but for the journey, right? That they can also grow in their discipleship, because they're going to inherit an eternity that will be a continuation of the decisions that they make today. And so that's why it's important we make good decisions today, because I'm going to reap the fruit of that for eternity. Okay, so then finally, just to come back to our clear coat hooks for the book of Revelation, for us to remember as we go, as we finish up these 4 weeks, the central picture in this book is of the Lamb that was slain. It is a book about Jesus. It's not primarily a book about the Antichrist. It's a book about the risen Christ. It should, at the end, when we get to the end of the book, we should know more about Jesus than we did at the beginning. This book was written by a first century Christian for first century Christians using first century literature devices. We have to understand what John was writing in his context before we can begin to understand it in our own context. Thirdly, this book reveals and makes clear, it doesn't confuse. And then fourthly, it focuses on the clear call to worship and discipleship. Stay the course. Be faithful, whatever comes up in the pathway, whatever comes up on the track, stay faithful to Jesus. And then finally, again, the overall framework is of hope. Hang everything else off that. Outstanding. Excellent. Wow. 22 chapters in 4 weeks. 15 of those we covered in one week. Guys, I've really enjoyed, so we'll have some space for Q&A now, so you can either just jump in, unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can type away in the chat. But I just want to say that I've really enjoyed this. I think this has been a great room to be able to outwork our calling as a Bible college here in Denmark, in Kolding, to equip a generation of people to live faithful lives of discipleship that actually impact their communities and impact their nation and impact their families and their children and their children's children. That we really believe as a college, what we're producing is people who make an impact, not just in their life and not just in their communities, but for generations. That the testimony, what is happening? that the testimony of this place is, in 50 years' time, someone will say, my mum or dad went to Bible college and my family was different because of it. And actually my community, my church, my nation was different because of it. And so we really see these open teachings as a way, even in the middle of lockdown, to be able to equip not just our students, those who have signed up, but to actually offer it much wider to anyone who wants to join in. But if you are interested in, or you know of someone who really needs to be at Bible college, we've got great teachers, we've got great staff here, we have a great program that is designed to do just that. It's to equip you for your life to make an impact. And so we are hoping to open up properly before the end of the year. That would be really nice. Our goal at the moment, this is not in stone, but our goal at the moment is to create some kind of self-contained course of maybe 2 or 3 months that'll get us through the summer. And I just encourage you, if you have anyone in your world, or maybe it's you, who needs to be at Bible college, try dropping a little seed and to tap them on the shoulder and say, well, why don't you give it a go for 2 or 3 months? Just treat the time from now until summer holiday as a test. Dip your toe in the water and see what it's all about, and then decide to sign up for a year. I think that'll be a great opportunity. Yeah, well, I hope it's blessed you guys, and I'd love to take some questions about this week, or maybe just that you've carried over the last 4 weeks. Feel free to use the chat, and we'll just interrupt.
Is Revelation cover at Bible school, or is it, I don't know, couldn't you say exactly that's definitely going to be on the syllabus?
Is Revelation something we, sorry, cut out. Is Revelation something we cover at Bible college?
Mm-hmm.
It has been, so I did a slightly longer treatment of Revelation, I think a couple of years ago now. I think we did it over 10 weeks. So I don't, we don't do something similar. We haven't done something similar this year where we have 10 weeks for it. It is included in the curriculum in the sense that we do an introduction to the Old Testament and an introduction to the New Testament. And so I would put in, one of those classes or 2 of those classes might be unpacking Revelation. But again, that would be even more condensed than we've done here. But the good news is this 4-week class will exist for eternity on YouTube.
Thanks. Are you also going to upload the slide from today, the
Yes,
PowerPoint?
I will do that after this call. Yeah.
So I have a little question about the seals and the trumpets. Do we know the timeline if it's on top of each other or after each other, or is it already there? Do you know anything about that?
So I think again the thing that I'm most convinced about, because not all commentators agree about the book of Revelation, so different commentators take different angles. The thing I'm most convinced about is what is happening with the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls is diving deeper into the same event. So the seals can contain all of the trumpets and all of the bowls. So it's like we're spiraling into the same event, going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then the other thing is to think of it as Revelation. Revelation has different horizons in view, right? There's a past horizon, a present horizon, and a future horizon. It's dealing with these different horizons. And so when I look at that, the rhythm I think I see in the book of Revelation is like waves crashing on the shore. So there's kind of a cycle to it. So what John was describing in the book of Revelation would have connected and resonated and made sense for his audience in the first century in Turkey, right? They would have read that, they would have seen it, they would have looked around at their experience and said, wow, this is happening now, or this is building towards this now. And I think every generation can have that same experience. So that this is kind of like it's waves crashing on a shore, another wave, it's coming back again, it's building up. But that just like waves on a shore, every 7th wave or something is a big wave. And I think that this is what we see in Revelation. It's like, yeah, this will be a thing that repeats, but one day there will be a big wave. One day there will be a culmination of all of this where it comes in its fullness, and we see it in its fullness, and then Jesus returns. So Revelation is both a pessimistic book, thinks things are just going to get worse and worse and worse, and it's an optimistic book. Ultimately, the end of all of this is hope and restoration. So both of these things are true. I think the message of it is we can expect that the church will experience increasing levels of persecution. So here's the thing. Oh, hi. So I just got distracted by a baby. You guys are the worst, bringing dogs and babies onto the Zoom call. So here's the thing. It betrays a certain kind of safe Western Christianity to say, do you think this is or like, what's the timeline of persecution? Because so much of the church around the world is currently in it. Christians in Sudan or North Korea or Syria, if you were to ask them if they were currently experiencing something like end times persecution, I think they would. We're literally, Easter is the most dangerous season for the church in these places, and the very real risk of death and danger to your family or your livelihood is very real. So the church around the world is experiencing tribulation. Yeah, I think we exist in the age of tribulation, and one day it will culminate in something great, not good, but something tremendous, like something massive, and that will signal the return of Jesus. It's my very long answer to that question. Cool. Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed teaching it. I really have.
Can we just say thank you to you because you have used 5+ Thursdays and on teaching. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's good. I really hope it served. I hope it served you guys, and I hope it equips you to read this book